Welcome to another episode of LSVT Global's podcast, Think Big and Loud, where we share inspiring stories, expert insights, and engaging conversations, all designed to empower and uplift the lives of individuals with neurological conditions and those who love and support them. My name is Beth Peterson, and I'll be your host for the show today. And today we're honored to be joined by Ian Grant, Paul Mitchell, and John Caulcutt, the driving forces behind a powerful new album, Think Loud for Parkinson's. And this extraordinary project brings together some of Britain's most talented musicians to raise awareness and funds for Parkinson's research. So we're going to dive into their inspiring stories and the mission that unites them. So thank you for joining us, Ian, Paul, and John. I look forward to talking with you about your incredible journey behind your new album, Think Loud for Parkinson's.
Thank you.
And I guess I'll just jump right in with the inspiration behind the project. So what inspired you to create this album, and how did you bring it all together?
Ian can probably answer that one
I
first.
heard Paul on YouTube playing a cover. I've forgotten it already, Paul.
The cover was all by myself by Eric. The original was by Eric Carmen.
I've seen the Stones and the Doobie Brothers and Neil Young do remotely record songs during the lockdown. I thought, I wonder if Paul can do that. I contacted him and said, "Can you do that?" I didn't quite know how they work. The word was remote, and
Yeah,
you said you could.
Yeah, at a push. So Ian, as you know, you may or may not know in Ian's background, but Ian's been in the music business for all his life, and a lot of that was involved in artist management, and he managed some quite big names. So he knows a lot of people, and the whole idea of that was like inspired by what the Stones, as Ian had said, what the Stones and what the Doobies had done. You had this one with the Stones where they were all in their own houses, and it appeared as if they were all playing together live at the same time. But of course, the technology doesn't quite provide for that. They record their parts, it gets edited, and then it gets shown. So Ian had asked me if he got in his Rolodex and called up a few people, could we do something? And I said, well, I was going to say, I said to Ian, as long as everybody's got the ability to record themselves and video themselves and then share with us those files, we can start to assemble some stuff. What were you going to say, Ian?
Well, wasn't it originally going to be an anti-Boris song?
Yeah, we had this idea of writing an anti-Boris Johnson song because we were so anti the government at the beginning of COVID.
Because that's when it's during COVID that this all took place. That's
right.
It
all started in the first lockdown. Yeah, as you can imagine, lockdown provided a lot of people with a lot of extra time to do things. And in the very early days, there was a number of things that happened. And one of them that was really important was the fact that a lot of touring musicians, and I'm not talking about big rock bands, I'm talking about people that just play live and drive up and down the freeway, going to little villages and playing in folk clubs. They were cut off at the knees because they couldn't earn any money. And the Help Musicians charity was the first to step up. And in the first week of lockdown, they paid £500 each to over 17,000 musicians. So after some deliberation, we thought, well, if we can do something that would help the Help Musicians charity, as musicians, we would do something. We could do that. So that's how we started. And then we decided, or we were debating, how do we come up with a track that doesn't require any royalties paid to the publisher? And I happen to know that the House of the Rising Sun, which goes back, decades and decades, nobody actually owns the copyright to it. So I said to him, well, if we record a version of that, at least we won't have to pay any royalties. So that's how it started. And then Ian got out his Rolodex, and I just said, look, contact people and ask them, can they record at home? And that was how it all started. And Ian started phoning people.
So was that for the lead single? Was that the original idea, the single, or was the album already in the works?
That was just to see, first of all, if we could record something, right, Ian?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just wanted to prove in the concept.
What was even more about Paul was operating their laptop from home, from his own.
Yeah, it was about people having the equipment specifically to be able to do it. And then we then, that in terms of sort of, what ended up the album itself, the creation of that was sort of 4 years down the road. We'd done a number of these remote recordings, and then Ian had written the Think Loud tune inspired by the LSVT therapy. And then we were able to get Leo Sayer involved, and then that led to an interview on the radio station in Tasmania, and that guy Shane Bryan has become a massive supporter of the program. He was the one who said, "Why don't you do an album and monetize it that way?" And that was it. That's we went. That covers it.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So just from a little idea spread out to many people doing it on their own at home during COVID.
Yeah,
That's pretty inspiring. Yeah.
absolutely.
It's very special for me as Leo, because I've known him since 1968. We grew up together.
Okay. Yeah, and he's the lead vocal on that Think Loud song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he certainly put a lot into it.
Well, so Ian, I know you received LSVT Loud from a great speech therapist, Pip Steers. How
Yeah.
did LSVT Loud impact your communication abilities, and how did that translate into the album's creation?
Oh. um, the first thing I remember about having the treatment was having a nasology. It's called nasology. They put things up your nose and down your throat to make sure that when you do stretch, when you start training, you're not
right.
breaking them or making them sore. So I passed that,
Okay.
and then I had to do them all from my home because of COVID, not lockdown. And it was interesting because people were noticing a difference in my voice. It's pretty better then than it is now. I had a bad weekend. But it really did enable me to do more. Once your voice is gone or going down, it's a very disillusioning time. Obviously, you need speech to communicate. And it was marvellous. We did 3 sessions of 6, I think, before we actually met. And yeah, it's been a great thing to be involved with in this level, because this is totally organic. Nothing was planned. The only thing apart the system was that think that was a mantra for people like me. I don't think John's done it yet, has John? So yeah.
I think also the other thing to add to that, Beth, is the fact that when Ian, he just showed you that Think Loud sign. That was a constant part of his daily routine and the daily conversations that we were having. And as Ian said, Think Loud became a bit of a mantra for our everyday interactions before we even thought about Ian being inspired to write the Think Loud words, which is what started originally from a suggestion from, was it John Coleman suggested it, Ian?
No, it was Pip. It was
it was Pip.
Yeah. John Coleman was a slightly different approach. He was very much part of my this is John Coleman.
Stop parking and start living.
Yeah. What is fascinating is that my family, particularly Debbie, knows when I'm not thinking. When I'm talking, my voice will obviously drop. When I'm not thinking now. The minute I think it goes up again.
Okay, so that Think Loud helps you get back into what it should feel like for others to be able to hear you. Yeah. That's great. Well, yeah, and we've taken your song and we're helping to make that an anthem for us too. So, that Think Loud is what we say all the time when we're treating individuals with Parkinson's.
I think the connection with Pip and you, with Cynthia, was that Cynthia heard it by chance on YouTube and contacted Pip.
Yeah.
Which is very powerful.
Yeah, it is powerful. Yeah, I love that video. And so I know, so Think Loud is the mantra, and that's really kind of the headline lyric in the song. Were there any other aspects of LSVT Loud that you incorporated into the music or lyrics?
I've gone blank on that one.
Well, I can answer that while you're thinking, Ian, because I remember when you wrote the words, there were certain things like part of the speech therapy on a daily basis was to do your R's, was to do the
Yeah.
make the voice. So there's a specific reference in the lyrics in the song. It says start every day with an ah. Right, we did that. We sort of used a little bit of Beatle
Yeah.
backing vocals on that to make that fun. But that's exactly what there was a huge part of that is in the lyrics. Yeah, I mean, I think when Ian started to put those words down, I mean, even before we sort of turned it into a song lyric, he had the structure of the words and what he wanted to say, and it speaks very much to it. It speaks very much about the therapy and what it's about. If you listen to the words, each of the verses, it mentions the John Coleman book. It mentions the R therapy. And also, the think loud chorus is think loud so you can be heard. Think
Yeah.
loud so you don't miss a word. It's all, it's very, we're very proud of that.
Yeah. Well, you should be. We love that song. We play it all the time. It's our podcast. So listeners hear it at the beginning and end. Yeah, it's a great song. So
Oh, thank you.
yeah. Well, so how did you select the artists and the tracks for the album? And can you talk to us a little bit about what that creative process was like?
With great difficulty.
The great Ian's right. It is with great difficulty. I mean, it's like, to be fair, through this process, I had at best an arm's length relationship with most of the people that we've worked with on this, and it was Ian that brought them in and said, right, Paul's my mate who can do the recording and the production. You need to get in touch with him. So all of a sudden, from my point of view, I'm having conversations with all these various people. There's a number on the album that I did know, but there was a lot that I didn't. But it was also a case of who we could persuade to find the time to help us,
Yeah.
And in the early recordings, there's certain people that Ian has been very close to over his life. So Arthur Brown was one, and Arthur was happy to help. Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols was happy to help, and then some of the guys like Tony Butler, who'd been in Big Country, he was happy to help, and then the Stranglers, yeah. I mean, it sort of, and it started to grow, and there was a little bit of sort of, once you get one, you can start to get the other,
Yeah.
In the creative process, then, what ends up happening is, I mean, the way it starts nowadays, most artists are capable of using some form of computer-based multi-track software, and the basis of which is always a metronome click track, so everybody's in time. So when you use this multi-track, you've got a click, click, click. That's it, and that's the timing of it. And then it starts with a backing. So I mean, when we did House of the Rising Sun, it was literally a click track, myself playing the acoustic guitar part and singing what we call a guide vocal, so everybody knew where it was going to be, despite the fact I wasn't going to be the final singer. And then that goes to the other people. So that went to our friend Terrell Bryant, and he in his studio then recorded the drums and videoed himself doing that. Then Tony Butler did the bass. And it's funny because these things, I never forget, my mum was still alive then in 2021, and I remember being at my mum's apartment because she was locked in during COVID. And I remember being with and having a conversation with Tony Butler while I was there with my mum about the bass part that he'd just done, and I was desperately trying to download it and all this stuff. So everybody basically did all their bits, and then through these sharing sites like WeTransfer or Dropbox, people share with you what we call stems, which is it's a file. So then what I do is you put all those files into the software, you line them all up so that they all start at the same place, and when you play them, it sounds like everybody's playing together.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah. Yeah, you make it sound so simple. I know a lot went into it. Oh, that's great.
It is pretty simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Well, I know a lot of love and hours went into that project.
Absolutely.
And John, what role do you think that music plays in raising awareness and funds for Parkinson's research?
The short answer, Beth, is it plays a huge role. Raising funds for any charity is probably one of the most competitive industries known to man. People historically have all tried to fish in the same pond, go to the large charitable trust, make a presentation, come back 2 months later, do this, do that, and at the end of the day may or may not end up with anything. So as a charity for raising funds, you have to differentiate. You have to make yourself different to what other people are asking, so that we're not all fishing in the same pond. And then when you've got the technical abilities of people like Paul, and you combine that with Ian's contacts, and that's the one thing I think that probably went to your previous question. You need to have these contacts because these musicians are being asked all the time to do things for charities, whether it be the local village hall or something bigger. So you need the personal angle, that contact who says, yep, you know, Ian looked after us when we were in big country or whatever. We want to look after him. So it's very important to have the personal aspect as well as choosing the wider medium, if you like, of music to communicate, because not only can it raise funds, but it supplants all the barriers of culture, class, language, or whatever. It's a common denominator that we can all understand and appreciate, and something which can go worldwide. And it's very refreshing, the fact that Ian, and particularly Ian, got so many good artists to contribute to the album. But I was also telling you about an O2 concert we did with Tom Jones, with Eric Clapton, with Dire Straits, with Bonnie Tyler, with Mick Hucknall from Simply Red, with Van Morrison, with Yusuf Cat Stevens. And all of those people gave their time to raise money for cancer charity, the Royal Marsden, and for Parkinson's. And then the more recent concerts that we've done, which was remembering Gary Brooker from Procol Harum, which we did at his local theatre in Guildford, all of those funds went towards Parkinson's, as did ones that we did in Camden at the Roundhouse, which is one of our local sort of music hotspots, which we did a couple of months ago. All that money went towards Parkinson's. And it has to, not just the money, but the awareness, on the simple basis, as I said to you, that 1 in 50 is going to get it by 2050, unless we actually do raise the awareness and lead from the front on raising funds, so that we can leverage the government to put big money into what we need for the research. There have been several trials, as you know, going on throughout the world. Unfortunately, the main one that was trialed here, exenatide, last year, has proved to be useless. But there are others around the corner, and there's one in Germany, actually, which is just coming out. So raising awareness, differentiating, and making money is what music can do. And we've got a great team to do that.
Yeah, it does seem like an amazing team. And yeah, that music is the language of the world. I like how you're saying that it can resonate with anybody, anywhere. So it's a good way to get in. And how do you think that the album's overall message resonates with the experiences of people living with Parkinson's?
Well, I think, first of all, if you've got a debilitating disease for which there is no cure, and that's what Parkinson's is, you always need to have hope. You need to have hope to continue with your exercises and all the other things that you have to do to combat this horrible disease. And I think music gives you the opportunity to realize that people out there care, that they're sharing the problem in effect by buying the album, listening to the tracks, or whatever it might be. And it gives those with Parkinson's hope that there will be a cure, or something that slows it down, or something that hopefully reverses it, and that people are working on it. And because of this music, funding is coming in, which is going towards finding that cure.
Mhm.
I mean, Parkinson's, what is it? It's a lack of dopium in the brain. Come on, guys, we put people on the moon. Why can't we just put a little injection into your head with dopium and top it up? It all sounds so simple, but it doesn't. It isn't. And neurological diseases are hugely complicated to look at and deal with. But all of these things that we're doing, like we're having the chat now, because we raised awareness of what we're doing to help Parkinson's, and you are doing exactly the same from a different angle. Together, we can actually get that message across to millions of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that network I like from all different kinds of angles. I think that that is so powerful that people are connected in a lot of different ways. Well, and
Through a common denominator.
exactly, yes. And what do you think are some of the most memorable moments or challenges that you faced when producing the album?
Well, Paul is the technical guy on this. Let me tell you his capabilities. He's very shy, unassuming sort of fellow, is Paul, but technically he's absolutely brilliant. On the concert we did to remember Gary Brooker from Procol Harum's life, the last number we did on stage was A Whiter Shade of Pale. And then you think to yourself, well, there's really only one person who can sing that, and that's Gary Brooker. But we've got a problem in as much that he's dead. So Paul took a number of renditions and lip synced, as it's called, all of those together, so that we had the band playing live on the stage and Gary Brooker on the screen above with
Wow.
video all lip synced together by the magical Paul, so that it looked like it was part of the live performance. Quite incredible technically. And so
Yeah.
those are some of the most memorable moments and challenges in all of this, and I guess the same for making this album.
That track's also on the album.
Yeah.
So you get that track on when you buy the vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
When you buy the package, you get
But
that.
you get that track. But I just wanted to share with you, in answer to your question, what are some of the most memorable challenges? I mean, that
Yeah.
was an amazing challenge.
Yeah.
And yet, all the top musicians, whether we had our bass player, our drummer, these were world-class musicians, and all of them said, fantastic job.
Wow.
Thanks,
Yeah.
John. Well, the other thing, in answer, that's very kind of John to say that. I mean, the thing that stuck with me, which was most memorable, was when we did that first version of House of the Rising Sun. We wanted to get Arthur Brown to sing it. And he desperately wanted to sing it, but he had no means of recording it himself. He didn't have a laptop. He didn't know that he didn't have the technology. So I ended up, his partner and manager, Claire, she said, look, I'll buy a laptop if you load it with the right software. So basically, I got them a laptop. I loaded it with all the right software. I've couriered it to them with a set of headphones and a microphone. And then I used desktop remote software
Okay.
to be able to operate his machine.
Wow.
Whilst I had him on FaceTime, watching him sing it, and I'm hearing it, and it was all done. So the whole thing. So when you see the video of that track,
Yeah.
it's actually what you see Arthur singing it. That is actually him recording his vocal at the same time. So he was singing that at the same time. So that was quite a challenge, but we made it work.
Yeah.
And then
I've got another challenge. I've got to step out for just a couple of minutes. Is that all right, Beth?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Thanks.
And then what was the other memorable moments? I mean, Ian, what was your most memorable moment from the program, from the recordings?
Recordings. I think. Go on.
I was going to say the Kodo one was quite something. Let There Be Drums.
Yeah, I suppose it is no special one of all. I was going to mention Pete Townsend, but he didn't actually play on the album. I'll come back to that. And the Kodo, for some reason, I had in my head Japanese drummers. I don't know why or what. But I thought of them, and I thought of Let There Be Drummers, which is a 60s song by a drummer called Sandy Nelson. And I played the Paul. He understood. I then, a Japanese friend of mine, tracked down the Kodo drummers. And the next thing was needed guitar, and a certain type of guitar. Dwayne Eddy. My wife suggested Hank Williams.
Hank Marvin.
Hank Marvin.
Hank Williams is no longer with us.
So I got his details and contacted him. And it's one of those that took a long time because his availability. And he was the other side of the world in Perth, Australia. But it was actually magical when it came together.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how much we go into the rest of it, Paul, insofar as what we ended up with 19 drummers. But we did.
Well.
Yeah, so that was quite. I mean, that was a big job. The interesting thing with that as well, going back to the sort of prerequisite that we said to you about remote recording, we asked people, can they record what they want to play and send us a stereo, or send us the track so that we can incorporate it, and also can they video themselves? And these Kodo drummers in Japan, not only did they send us like a high resolution recorded stereo recording of them playing the drums, the video they sent had about 6 camera angles. It was like,
oh my gosh,
it was unbelievable. It was absolutely unbelievable.
Wow.
And then Hank Marvin was in Perth in Australia recording his parts in one of his friend's studios. So I mean, on that particular track,
yeah,
Hank Marvin was in Perth in Australia. The Kodo drummers were in Tokyo, and Roger Taylor, who played the other drum part, was in Guildford in Surrey in England.
Wow.
That's just nuts.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Ian, I can tell you've touched a lot of lives. You're very persuasive in getting all the support. That's amazing. And so, kind of speaking on that, I know you just mentioned Pete Townsend. So, I know you have support from him, Leo Sayer, I think something with Ozzy Osbourne. So, how does the support of well known artists like this impact the project's reach and credibility?
Pete was very special. I've known him for quite a while. I know his family, his brother, and so forth. And in fact, the Who were the first band I ever saw, so in 1967. So that became very important. It looked like it wasn't going to happen. I must have spent 9 months in trying to get him to do it, from agreeing to play a track and then not. Then it had to be in New York to launch a new version of Tommy. And eventually, he came through and said, I'll read you what he sent to me. He said, I just have too much work to take on anymore. I'm getting old. The pressure across the board is overwhelming and costly to my time. One thing I do have, though, is money. My charity may be able to support yours. And it did.
Wow.
So that was a really cool thing when that happened, because we were hoping that he was going to be able to play and do something, and he was, and as Ian said, Ian just did not let go. And I think that's one of the things, you can imagine in this process and ongoing, the sort of benchmark for raising money with music is Bob Geldof when he did Feed the World, and then the American version of that, We Are the World came from that. But if Bob Geldof made himself extremely unpopular at the time. I mean, he even swore on live television on the BBC. But the point was that was the only way. And we've talked about that. And you have to be, you have to be tenacious. You have to be courteous. You have to be courteously persistent is the best way of putting it.
Good, yeah.
You've got to remain
He
courteous.
actually improvised.
He did. Yeah.
He sent an email saying how hard it is. He knows how hard it is with his own charity. And he's improvised. Which is right, straight. The one band that didn't come to the party, I thought, was U2.
Oh.
U2.
Yeah.
Yeah, we thought they might play, but
wow,
they didn't. But it's a very fine line between these things. Then what the artists want to do, the management, and then whether there's lots of different things, lots of different reasons. You can't blame individuals. You just have to work with the ones that you've got.
Yeah.
The thing is about artists that have too many requests. the bigger the
Oh.
artists, the more they get. But
Yeah.
Coldplay, they were one very, very civil, and the manager was an extremely nice guy. I didn't know him.
Mhm.
But they offered tickets for their show, backstage tickets,
Wow.
and they went for £4,500 at that.
Oh yeah, at the Cure Parkinson's event that
Yeah.
that was going on in London in October. Yeah, there was an auction, and that contribution of the 2 tickets from Coldplay raised £4,500 for the charity.
Oh my
which is
gosh,
amazing.
yeah.
It's amazing. So, but going back to Leo, what your original question was, how's it raised the credibility? Obviously, Pete Townsend allowed us, from a press point of view, to get loads of front page. We got the Telegraph picked it up, various stuff that Pete Townsend had given his time. But
Yeah.
Leo coming forward for singing it. Then he performed the Think Loud track with me and Josh Phillips and the band live at the Roundhouse during this during this event. And also it's the picture on the cover of the album. Actually, I've got a copy.
Oh.
It's that particular gatefold. That's myself with there's Leo with myself and Josh at the Cure Parkinson's event.
Yeah.
Performing.
Wow.
So and Leo has really thrown himself into it, and he's been really good. So it's helped it massively. I mean, it's still very, very difficult to keep getting awareness. It's a slow burn, but I mean, obviously everybody listening to this for a start should know about it and investigate and try and get a copy, because all the money all the money goes to the charity. So, but those people have, added a lot to it.
Yeah. Well, and I know, so the album is released, it's a limited edition vinyl and CD. So how does that contribute to the overall appeal?
It's always very difficult because nowadays, as we know, 3/4 of the record business now, of the music industry, gets its revenues through streaming. And that's a really, really hard thing to monetize if you're trying to raise money for charity, because people just pay their monthly subscriptions. And unless we go to the CEO of Spotify and just say, can you give us some money, which obviously a ton of other charities are doing on a daily basis, you have to have something. So we know that interestingly enough, in the last 6 years, the sales of vinyl have increased about 20% a year on year for the last.
Interesting.
It's incredible. I mean, you can see behind me, my day business is I make speakers and turntables, and we manufacture turntables to sell. Wow. So we thought, well, okay, we'll do vinyl because you get the art. If you do vinyl, you've got something. It's a physical product. And also you can include the extra stuff, like the lovely booklet that's got all the pictures in it, and it's got all the story of Ian and all of the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we said, okay, vinyl. And then we had the conversation, well, what about if people haven't got a record player and they've got a CD? And we said, okay, well, for a few cents more, we can just put a CD in. So you get the CD there.
Yeah.
And then also inside this package, you get a download voucher, which I think may have been stolen by my daughter. You get a download voucher so that you can download a digital copy of the whole thing to play on your MP3 player, your iPod, or whatever. But the whole purpose of this is that this is just even if you don't do anything with it other than put it in a frame or leave it on a shelf so that your friends can see it, it's a physical thing.
Yeah.
And what you'll find, I'll give you an example. Taylor Swift's last album sold over 1 million copies on the vinyl version.
Wow.
Despite the fact that the majority of her fans will listen on streaming. So what they'll do is they'll buy the album. They won't even take it out they'll just put it on a shelf so they've got it and collect it, and then they play it on the streaming.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's what people are doing. I mean, there are some people that, so that was part of the idea.
Yeah.
I should also just mention that I put a QR code on the back of the cover so that if you scan that, it'll take you to where you can buy more.
Oh, good. That's good. You are good at your job.
So that was the thinking with that.
Yeah. Well, and are there some bonus tracks on that too?
Yeah. So there's 5 tracks on the album so there's 20 in total, and there's 5 tracks, including the one that John Caulcutt mentioned a minute ago, which is the Gary Brooker Whiter Shade of Pale. There's 5 tracks that are not licensed for anything other than the physical media. Okay. So if you want to get the whole collection, you have to buy this. You can get 15 of them online streaming, if that's what you want to do. But there's a couple of numbers that you don't get. You don't get any of the live tracks that we took from the Gary Brooker Memorial Concert. and you don't get Leo Sayer's fantastic rendition of Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles. And if Leo was here now, he would tell you that part of the thinking in that story is that, Parkinson's can be a lonely existence when you're suffering it. And, he said all the lonely people, which is the opening line, that's the chorus of that. So that's why he decided to, to donate that track himself, as well as a couple of new ones. But
And so that you don't have to be lonely, Beth, if you haven't got a record player, one quick call to Paul and he can let you have one. He is the man.
That's right. I know. I see where I need to order it.
They're very reasonably
buy them
priced.
while the discounted sale is on, right, Paul?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
That sounds great.
You always get a friends and family discount.
Okay,
in fact, in all seriousness, if any LSVT Global podcast subscribers, or people that are on the mailing database, will get offered this, and I will make sure that Cynthia puts in a discount code for anybody that wants to buy a turntable from us.
That's great. We can put that in the show notes. I like that. That's great. Well, and so what do you hope that listeners take away from the album, both in terms of the music and the cause it supports with Cure Parkinson's?
Very simple. Hope, because somebody out there is doing something to help them. Raising funds, which they know will go towards a cure. In the UK, we've got 2 organizations, for instance, Parkinson UK, that's about living with it. Whereas Cure Parkinson's is about what it says, finding a cure. And that's what everybody who's got Parkinson's wants to hear. And I guess we have to appreciate that there will be ones that do work or slow it down, and ones like exenatide, which didn't work at all. But it gives us hope. It gives us a feeling that somebody out there does care, that somebody is raising funds, and that those funds, those vitally needed funds, will be going into not just raising awareness of Parkinson's, but finding a cure.
So then with that, how do you envision the funds from the album being used by Cure Parkinson's? If you know the specific research or initiatives that it will support?
Absolutely. I mean, they've got a team of 6 researchers, scientists, doctors, working on cures all the time and experimenting with a lot of things, not just going for the ultimate, which is finding the cure, but they call it repurposed drugs. So some of the drugs which have been used historically for things like diabetes become repurposed. There's a German one which is originally made for vertigo, which has got an element of something special inside it, but it's a repurposed drug. So not all drugs are brand new. There are several that Cure Parkinson's are working on 6 different potential cures at the moment. And to do that, they need in this current year 4.1 million just to continue to do that research and to try and get those across the line. And by across the line, I mean not just in terms of trialing, but actually to make them successful.
Yeah. And then I'm going to switch back over to Ian. And Ian, do you have any personal stories or experiences that might have influenced any of the specific tracks or collaborations that are on the album?
The first one that comes to mind, Paul has half the interest and the other half. Two guys, Richard Thompson from Pebble mentioned, and Hugh Cornwall from the Stranglers. They both went to school here, and actually the first band they ever saw was a band called Nashville Teens on a bill with original rock and roll. I think you were there, John, at that concert.
Yeah, I was. Was that the first band you ever saw, did you say?
Not me. It was Hugh's first band. Mine was
Nashville Teens. I was born.
The Nashville Teens was a British beat combo that had a hit with Tobacco Road.
Oh.
And what Ian was saying there is that Hugh Cornwell and Richard, who were Richard from Fairport, Hugh from Stranglers, were at school together. And then the first gig they were ever at was that one, which we think John Caulcutt may have been at as well.
And I think I was. I'm the only one old enough to have been there. Me and Moses.
But Ian, finish your story, because you reached out to Hugh, didn't you?
I did. I knew that the original singer, Arthur Sharp, who was one of the two singers in the band. I managed to get this track to him before he died. He died on Christmas Day 2 years ago, and he heard the song before he passed and loved it. What else is it?
Yeah, so basically, Ian's voice is going, so I'll step up. But basically, Hugh Cornwell from the Stranglers and Richard Thompson, we said, would you like to reunite? Because their first band at school was called Emil and the Detectives. And they went together to see that Nashville Teens concert as their first concert and saw them play that hit, Tobacco Road. So they said, well, if we're going to do anything, we'll do Tobacco Road.
Okay.
So we got them together to record that. And then we added the Fairport Convention bass player and drum duo, Dave Pegg and Dave Mattox. And they recorded, the bass was recorded in France. The drums were recorded in Boston. Richard Thompson recorded his guitars in his place in America, and then Hugh was somewhere in England. And again, that was all mixed here. And then, I think the most, as Ian just mentioned, the most rewarding part of that was that Arthur Sharp, the original singer of the track that was released by the Nashville Teens, heard it and gave it his blessing, gave it his thumbs up before it got released, which is brilliant. So that was one particular. And then, I mean, the one that springs to mind for me was and it was one of the most challenging, was there's another one with a Fairport connection. So Fairport Convention have had for the last, since 1981 or 1980, they've had an annual reunion when they stopped touring, and then they had a reunion a year after, and it's grown into a big separate festival, which in 2020, because of lockdown, was stopped. They couldn't do it. And there's a specific track which is on this side one of this album called Meet on the Ledge, which was a sort of an anthem for Fairport Convention. And what Fairport had asked me to do was, could I record a version of it that they could play on the night of the Saturday night of the festival that wasn't going to take place, and it was played on Radio Oxford originally. Never been released on vinyl. And basically on that track, it's got singers from everybody that was on the bill, which is why it says Fairport's Crop Property 20. There's 20 people on that record. Wow. And all their photographs are in the inside cover of the album.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting.
Yeah, that's an amazing reach. Well, how do you think that the album has contributed in general to the broader conversation with Parkinson's and its impact on families and individuals dealing with it?
I think we're right in the that we're early days at the moment, Beth, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
But provided the distribution and the reach that people like you have got, 60,000 clinicians across the world, maybe average 20 clients each, call it 10 for easy calculations, and you've got 600,000. How many can your clinicians persuade their clients to buy, not only so it's music to their ears, but also in the knowledge that that money from the sale of that album is going to help them themselves. So buy something that you want to listen to, that gives you hope, that gives you joy, that takes away some of the loneliness, but above all, something which raises money towards finding a cure. That's the message.
And I think in addition to what John is just saying there, I've got very recent experience just this past weekend of seeing that through social media that people are starting to talk about this and the awareness is being raised. So so it was an interesting question because it only really struck me at the weekend. So basically, on Facebook, there is a Richard Thompson group, amongst other things, and people were on there were discussing, you know, the album. They were discussing who's playing on what. They were asking me questions once I chipped into the conversation, and then they were asking, and they would, all of them were talking about the cause. And it seemed to me that almost all of them in this chat, and there was about 10 people in there, were all affected one way or another. None of them were directly Parkinson's sufferers, but they all knew people that were either living with it or you know. So I think we've already seen that we've started to raise the bring the conversation to the fore. Obviously, we've got a long way to go, as John said, but I've got that gave me a lot of hope at the weekend because I could see people were actively engaging with each other about not just the album but the cause.
Yeah, when it's
We're-
go ahead.
We have another big connection. Would you believe connection? Arthur Sharpley was in the Natural Teens, we just said, was managed by Don Arden. Don Arden's daughter was Sharon Arden, now Sharon Osbourne. And 2 years ago, I tried to get a message to Ozzy. He's got Parkinson's. It didn't get to him. And the person who took it was on the phone to a photographer, a filmmaker called Phil Alexander, about Ozzy's show at Aston Villa Football Ground this year. And the long and short of it is that through that conversation, we were put forward for a beneficiary of the charity, of the event. And the connection was made between Think Loud and Cure Parkinson. You finish it off, Paul.
Well, I was going to say that's all come full circle because you can imagine when we were first thinking about doing this album to raise awareness for Parkinson's, you think about who are the most famous people in the media and certainly in music that have got Parkinson's. The number one on that list is Ozzy Osbourne. It's, you know, it's been well documented in the series The Osbournes, and that he's been living with Parkinson's. So, you know, the fact that we've been trying to reach him, and the certain irony in the fact that, as Ian just mentioned, you know, Sharon Osbourne was Sharon Arden and her dad was Don Arden, who managed the Nashville Teens, blah, blah. It all connects together.
Yeah.
And it was only that last bit, because Black Sabbath are doing this reunion, this one-off gig. Did you know about that? You know?
Well, I read about it. Yeah. The farewell.
It's taking place in July, and they don't want to keep any of the money. They want to give it away to charities, and they wanted to give it away to sort of Birmingham-based charities. That was the idea. But as Ian just mentioned, Phil Alexander, who's also a friend of Ian's, was just so happened to be the filmmaker that had been hired to work with Ozzy and Sharon and film this whole process of them getting the concert organized, because that's also going to be released and will raise money. And he just happened to be there and said, well, what about Think Loud? What about Cure Parkinson's? What about this album? What about Think Loud?
Yeah.
And that's when it was brought to their attention, and they said, yeah, what a great idea. So it's amazing because indirectly we've got what we wanted. We haven't got a track from him, but what we were hoping to do, and that sort of rounds off question about what might be next for the project.
Yeah.
And one of the things we're thinking about there is that can they give us some concert recording that we can use for a future album? And in fact, one of the other ideas that John Caulcutt and I came up with when we were at dinner with another friend of ours called Kevin Cahill, who's also a Parkinson's sufferer. Kevin is one of the original trustees of Comic Relief and one of the original founders of Comic Relief. So he knows a lot about raising money. And myself and John were at a dinner with him. Sadly, Ian couldn't be there that night. But one of the things that came out of that conversation was, and I came up with the idea for the branding, was called Fest Aid. So to get artists to give a recording of whatever they're doing in a live festival environment. So they turn up to play at a festival. Everything gets recorded, but very little of that gets used for anything. And it's no skin off the artist's nose to say, yeah, okay, fine, we'll give you one of these tracks. And bearing in mind how many people, so that's another thing that we're thinking about doing. And again, Cure Parkinson's would be a big beneficiary for that.
Wow.
So
and the bigger the artist, the bigger the reach.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at some of these people. I'm thinking of one particular young guy at the moment, no names mentioned, who's got 23 million followers. Well, if he did a track and wrote to those followers and said what an evil, debilitating disease Parkinson's was, and would you please help those who got it? And would you please help those who are trying to find a cure by buying this track? I don't know what percentage it would be, but if it was 23 million followers, would 10%? 2.3, and if they paid a tenner each, that would be 23 million pounds.
Yeah.
So music is a wonderful way to raise money, to retain hope, but also social media has allowed that to be pushed out far and wide to fan bases across the world, or to databases like your own. And it's just a fantastic opportunity, and I feel confident we will carry on doing the recorded stuff. We're doing further live stuff. We've got one concert I'm organizing at the moment in the Isle of Wight, the home of the first big Isle of Wight festival, if you remember. Your granny may have told you about the 1970 festival. I was there. And the Isle of Wight's been associated with music for a long time. And we're doing another concert this year in aid of Parkinson's.
Wow. Well, yeah, you guys are doing tremendous work, and I see that it's going to continue. It's amazing, and we applaud you for doing that, and thank you for doing that. And we're happy to help spread as much as we can in our network and have that ripple effect into other networks and see how big we can make it. So thank you for your work on it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, and I'll go ahead and close now. I don't want to take any more of your time. I really appreciate you all being here. So a big thank you to you three. We have Ian Grant, Paul Mitchell, and John Caulcutt. And I'm going to mention again the theme song that you're hearing. You hear it at the beginning and end of the podcast. It's Think Loud for Parkinson's by Kindred Spirit and Leo Sayer, as was mentioned. And it was a song and video inspired by LSVT Loud speech treatment from Ian Grant here and developed to raise awareness for Parkinson's worldwide. So that's available for download and streaming on all major music platforms. And proceeds benefit the UK charity Cure Parkinson's. And I'll put the video link in our show notes for that. And then, of course, the album we've been talking about, that Think Loud for Parkinson's. We really encourage you to have a listen. There it is. Support the project by purchasing that limited edition vinyl and CD. And I'll put that link in the show notes too. And I want to thank our production team, CS Design Studios, for helping to make the podcast possible. If you're interested in learning more about LSVT Loud speech therapy or LSVT Big physical and occupational therapy, you can visit our website, lsvtglobal.com. And we encourage you to click subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss an episode. And we look forward to thinking big and loud with you again next time. So thank you all for being here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.